Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of The Jump Show. Very much looking forward. This is the November meeting at Cheltenham. 3 days of quality action to look forward to and delve into. Alongside, as always, Dan Overall and Jake Price. Jake, how are you, my friend? Hope all is well. No doubt the blood is pumping up a little bit faster.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky couple of days at Cheltenham, but it's always good to have racing there. And at least I am not dying like Dan is.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's November meeting, so it's time for my traditional annual illness, which it's generally quite remarkable how consistent it is. I think it's now the third or fourth year in a row where just coming into this week I am on death's door. So I'm picking myself up the floor for this. I'll try and bounce back. I will be there on Friday, and I'll very much a see how I fare basis on how long I last. But unsurprisingly, I probably won't be in top form. But then again, most people would say that's pretty standard procedure anyway.
I think personally, it's your immune system kind of telling you that you're going to spend 3 days in the company of Jake Price and Andrew Blair White, and it's just saying we can't handle it.
Yeah,
we
it's like
can't do it.
My immune system has an unbelievable clock on it. It generally remembers trauma, and I think it's now just made of Swiss cheese. So I think it actually welcomes diseases at this time of year. It's just like, please, just give me a reason to make you ill. And yet I keep defying it. So one of these days it's going to catch up with me, you'd think.
Well, all I would say is, Dan, it's a true Trojan you are to be on this show, even though you're ill. So thanks for doing it.
And the things I do.
Do keep that mute button pressed. Jake, let's go to you, because before we get started, we got some news, haven't we, on the, as Dan goes coughing, on the Greatwood Hurdle ticket giveaway.
Yeah, thanks to Unibet. Obviously, we were giving away 2 pairs of tickets on the last week's video. We had loads of entries, so thank you all for getting involved. The 2 winners are Stephen Kirkland and Samuel Taylor. So well done to you. We'll get those tickets sent out, and hopefully you enjoy some good racing on Sunday, and we'll now try and give you some winners to go alongside.
Yeah, of all 3 days, I would argue that Sunday is actually the best day of the November meeting this year. So enjoy that, guys, and very well done indeed. Hope you have a fantastic day. Let's move on to the show itself, shall we? We've got a lot to get through, a lot of races to cover. I'm going to start briefly by looking back over the last 7 days. Jake, come back to you. What's the performance that most has caught your eye, do you think?
Yeah, we'll keep them brief. Obviously, we've got a lot of races to get through. I'm going to Bangor today, and it was the opening race, the the Handicap Chase over 2.5 miles, and it was Lowry's Bar who made his Handicap Chase debut for Philip Hobbs and Johnson White. Obviously, they're a team that have been going great guns at the start of this season. He was a 4 times winner over hurdles, finished second in his point-to-point before that. And I thought he jumped out really nicely. He was in a prominent position the whole way around. He absolutely tanked around the field, to be honest. And he just found 1 too good in Jaguar, who yet again just found loads off the bridle to go and score quite cosily in the end. But I think Lowry's Bar, he's off the mark of 130, probably got a couple pounds for that. I think there's plenty of handicap chases to be won with him this season. When he gets the fence right, he gets it really right. So, yeah, he's a horse to keep on side.
Yeah, good shot. I think that was a pretty decent card overall at Bangor today, I have to say. And Larry's Bar, definitely one to keep on side for sure, Jake. Dan, what about you?
Firstly, I'd echo that entirely. I actually had a little note below the one I'm going to talk about saying word for Jaguar and Lowry's Bar. Because that was, I think that looked a really good race on paper, and Jaguar now is finally developing into that performer we hoped he could be. Obviously, quite novice, quite raw last year. I thought today, Bangor, sharp track, big field, has to be held up. It might catch him out, and it looked like it might, but once he got the gap, he powered for it quite nicely. I think those are 2 really impressive chasers, and they'll be good handicap chasers going forward. The one I'm going to highlight is the Kingpin for Ben Pauling, who was 3rd in the 2 mile novice hurdle at Sandown, won by Anno Power. Messy race. I mean, Moab at 125-1 came there cruising at one stage, and you're thinking, what on earth is going on here? But I thought the Kingpin did a lot right. Few disappointments in behind, admittedly, but there's a horse who was second to Port Gilan, his Irish point-to-point, who's quite well regarded. He was second to Mr. Mega in the bumper. He's just a bit of a slow-burning, staying type who will just continue to improve. They seem to like him quite a bit. He's a half-brother to Sizing Tennessee and Mount Ida. Sustained chasing, you probably imagine, is going to be his game in time, but one for your trackers, and no surprise if come by the end of the season, he's competing in some of those good 2.5 mile, maybe even 3 mile handicap hurdles. But a horse, I think, with a good future indeed as a stayer.
Okay, good stuff. I'm going to plump for Greenways, a horse who won on his debut for Tom Simmons at Hereford the other day. And he won that for a mark of 79, which is kind of ludicrously low. And obviously he was well ahead of his mark. Had been with Dominic French Davis and ran a couple of decent enough races, but nothing to shout home about. Tom Simmons has clearly found the key to him, and he was given a very confident ride indeed by Ben Post from the back of the field. And I mean, he really could have won by as far as he wanted. In the end, it was 3 lengths, but I mean, he's so well handicapped. I can see him putting a sequence together of 2 or 3 wins at least. And that was over 2 miles, 5.5 furlongs. It would be no surprise, given how well he hit the line. I know he's really well handicapped, that 3 miles plus in time is going to suit. So I think plenty of options for that horse, but he's quite lightly raced. Tom Simmons is only had the one start with him. Clearly has found what it takes to get him to win. So keep an eye on Greenways in the coming weeks. He's not going to be a star, but I think he'll put together a sequence. Let's move on to Cheltenham then, shall we? November meeting time. And we're going to go to the Friday first. Remember, everybody, that the Shloer Chase is now on the Friday, not the Sunday. That has been changed as of this year. I'm going to start by looking at the 145, and that is the Novices Chase. It currently sees 4 runners declared with 4 runners: Springwell Bay, Highland, Buddy One, Resplendent Grey. So only a small field for this. Springwell Bay, Dan, is the favourite at the moment. I have to say, I'm going to have a quick word on this one before you guys do. But Dan, I thought Buddy One, off a hurdles ratings, he's well clear of the rest. I know he was a little bit disappointing last time. I do think, though, if he puts his best foot forward, he'd be hard to beat. What do you think?
Well, I think he's definitely the bet as the outside of the field. I think the price is just completely wrong. You look at this race, and it's not great at all, is it, really? You look at Springwell Bay. Obviously, I was on side with him on Chepstow, but he had his absolute perfect conditions there in good ground, 2.5 miles fresh. Doesn't tend to go on, hasn't in the past. I think that's generally a theme with some John Joe horses in general, really. Highland won a race at the October meeting that completely disintegrated. You can't even say it fell apart. I think that's actually being too kind. It disintegrated before our very eyes. Not sure really what you can make of that. And Resplendent Grey obviously won a handicap, being Ho Jolly Smoke, who just refuses to win any race. I'm not sure what that's really worth. And as you say, Buddy One on hurdles form, I never really took to him as a hurdler. I didn't think he was really going to be up to competing in Grade 1s after he won the handicap here off a big mark, but he ran really well a few times. I mean, he had no real right to, say, 4th in the Stayer, 2nd in Aintree, 4th at Punchestown. Chasing hasn't looked completely natural to him just yet. He won at Galway, didn't exactly jump with aplomb, but got it done. It was a pretty nothing race. I then went to Wexford, where he was behind Hartwood and Corbett's Cross. But I mean, you put those two in here, they'd win doing handstands 85 lengths. It's a different caliber of opposition. The ground is better, which is definitely going to be a help to him. And he's still learning, I think. Once he actually, I think, was ridden into a fence with some confidence, he tended to jump in okay. It was when he was almost asked to make his own mind up, which I think didn't exactly suit. So I think hopefully they've learned from that. I don't want necessarily to make all. I don't think he liked that either. I say the outside of the field currently, I just think that's the wrong price.
Yeah, I'm total agreement, I have to say. And as we all know, over the hurdles, he was considerably the best of those 4. Okay, Jake, what do you reckon about that 4 on a field?
Yeah, it's not a race that I'm rushing to get involved in. It's not a Friday card that I'm rushing to get involved with either, to be honest. But we'll see through the rest of the previews. I think Springwell Bay is probably the right favourite. As Dan said, the question is, can he bounce on from that opening victory? I thought it was a good victory. I thought he won the race well. I don't see any reason why stepping up to 3 miles should be a problem for him. It's just that fact of whether he can bounce on. And yeah, I echo Dan's thoughts on Buddy One to a sense that he has not looked like a natural over fences. That's my opinion of it. I think when he was at Galway, he was very careful at his fences. That's probably the best way to describe it. He didn't do a lot wrong, but he also didn't do a lot right either. He could easily be better than these obviously hurdles mark, says he is. Yeah, it's not a race I'm, rushing to get involved with. At the prices, Buddy One is definitely the play. But I'd have it between the pair, and one of them hopefully will go and win it.
Yeah, good stuff. I think we're all in agreement Buddy One is overpriced there for sure. Jake, let's stay with you here for the Shloer Chase, one of the feature races on the Friday. Probably the feature race, really. Only the 4 runners, Edwardstone, Jonbon, Boot Hill, Unexpected Party. Kind of used to seeing a small field these days for the Shloer. That said, a little bit underwhelming. We haven't got a bigger field. Jonbon beat Edwardstone 3 times last season. Think it's going to be the same again?
Yes. I don't think there's a lot to say about this. Unexpected Party obviously only ran 4 days ago. They just come around here for prize money. That's fair enough. Boot Hill, it's a good starting point for him. But he's one of those grade 2 horses, really, isn't he? Like kind of the same as Edwardstone to a degree. But they can win their races, but I don't think they can be beating Jonbon and ratings suggest Jonbon is the best chaser. He is probably the best chaser in Britain. He's definitely going to win this race, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, given he's 8 years old, Dan, Jonbon, he's in the prime of his career. Everstone's now 10. He looked like he was on the downgrade a little bit last season. It'd be incredibly disappointing, wouldn't it, if Jonbon couldn't win this?
Yeah, it would. Obviously, you'd expect him to win it. I guess the hope for Edwardstone, if you're going to be a backer of him, is that they bounce out in front like they did towards the mid part of last season, which he really seemed to appreciate, then never did again. But even then, is that going to be enough to repel Jonbon? You're probably hard pressed to think so. Unexpected Paddy continues his weird campaigning mission this season, obviously after finishing second at Carlisle the other day, when I think that was probably a bit unexpected, and I'm pretty sure they were almost half grateful Nelson came and caught him, because that was probably not part of the plan. No idea. I think they're just going to run him as much as possible this season, maybe pick up some prize money and maybe come back for some sort of handicap in the spring. But yeah, it's a bit of a poor turnout. Jonbon, I would have loved to have seen him campaigned over further and see what he could have done as a 2.5 to 3 miler. But when you look at races like this and races that are inevitably to come, when he's going to be such short odds for all the top 2 mile races, you can see why they're sticking to it, because it's just easy prize money.
Would the Henderson form be a little bit of a worry to you, Dan? I know he's had a winner or two, but it's been a slow start.
I think they're a bit in and out. You've had a few disappointments and you've had some that have looked pretty impressive. So I think it's hard to really gauge at the minute. I think, as you say, they tend to be a bit of a slow starting yard anyway. And obviously with the lack of rain, we know they're on grass, so they tend to want some rain so they can actually get on the gallops proper over there. Wouldn't have too many concerns at the minute. You say this may be a more informative weekend, but it's been a bit hit and miss so far.
Yeah, possibly a little bit early to say. We're going to move on to the 3:30. Jake, back to you. It's the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. This is a grade 2 over the 2 miles 5 furlongs. To me, it looks like a bit of a match. I mean, I know that Gail Marler is talented in her own right, but Potter's Charm, Valgrand, I think, look a little bit of a cut above. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think the most interesting part of the race here for me is that they've managed to give Potter's Charm a mark of 139. I don't really see how in 2 runs, where he's won by 3 lengths and 2.25 lengths, I don't see how they plucked out 139 there. They must really be rating that Manila 6-0 for Gordon Elliott, because how else would you get to that mark? But it does put them, hit Valgrand's on 140, so it puts £1 between them on ratings. There's £2 between them on the penalty structure, because Potter's Charm won in Class 2 last time. Valgrand obviously won the graded race, so he gets the full penalty. I'd have it between the two. Wouldn't have a massive opinion. Currently, Potter's Charm is around 6-5 favourite, Valgrand 7-4. So at the prices, I'd probably just play Valgrand at the 2. But as I said, no real opinion. I think the only question mark I'd have about Valgrand is whether he wants to go up in trip to 2.5 miles. He looked plenty fast enough over 2 last time, didn't he? I don't see the immediate need when he ran over 2.5 miles at the end of the season at Bangor. That was probably his least impressive performance. So yeah, it's interesting that they're stepping up in trip. Interesting they're going back to the well straight away. Have it between the two, but again, unfortunately, not a very strong opinion on it.
Yeah, Dan, we know that you've been talking about the chances of Valgrand already on this show so far this season. Just a word on Potter's Charm now. I was at the Twiston Davis the other day, and I get the feeling they're very, very strong on this horse. They think he's very talented, and I think he's shown that so far. So, do you think of the two that Potter's Charm is the right favourite?
That wouldn't be like the Twiston Davis team to be confident about one. No, they're normally very reserved individuals over there. Can I just quote a quote from them earlier in the week about Broadway Boy, where they're saying, yeah, he's going to go to the Coral Grove Trophy. They'll tell if he's a Grand National horse, a Gold Cup horse, or both. Maybe one of my favourite lines of all time. So Broadway Boy to do an infamous double there is what the Twiston Davis team are telling us. So,
I love the way that it's either one or both. Like it's. How does that even make sense?
Hey, look, don't question it. You've been there. You were there. You know how they talk about horses. I'm sure you'll touch on one later in the card who they also have very high praise for indeed. I'm sure you'll get to as we talk about a race later on the Friday. But I would be concerned about the trip for Valgrand, because I think tactically, if it was obviously last time he was just so impressive in his jumping and going out from the front. And obviously, if it was 2 miles again, you'd think just do that again. But over 2 mile 5, they're going to want to employ the same tactics. When I thought going into the season, he wouldn't have a problem with an easy 2.5 miles. And obviously, the ground being in his favour isn't an issue. But obviously, are they going to be keen to press on as much as they did? Or are they going to have maybe some reservations about his stamina, in which case Potter's Charm is clearly the strongest stayer. Obviously, this was on softer ground. It would be Potter's Charm all over. as it stands for me, it's not a betting race. Obviously, because of my affinity with Valgrand, I hope he wins. We may learn a bit more about him, but even then, I'm not sure if it'll be a massive learning experience. It's because it's just still a bit of a muddling race. But yeah, another race I won't be getting involved in. And if Valgrand comes in again, then happy days. Hopefully, another few pounds for the handicapper after the £22 rise we've already had.
Well, as you say, the handicappers had a right good go at both those horses, and we're going to be seeing if the handicapper is right or not. So at the moment, £1 between the two. Hopefully, they'll be fighting out a very exciting finish. All right, lads. Anything else for Friday then? Jake, start with you.
Yeah, it is a tough card. I think that the races that obviously excite me and Dan the most are the topping and tail of the card, the two handicaps. Obviously, we've got some nice big fields for those, so that is where I'll be getting stuck in. In the opener, I thought the Billy Swagger had a pretty decent chance for Philip Rothwell. I actually backed him for a race at Limerick a couple of weeks ago where he was a non-runner. So the ground might be the only slight concern here. But that was, like rock solid ground at Limerick when everyone got pulled out. So, hopefully it's not too big a deal. But yeah, last season he was a good horse. He was quite progressive, won at Punchestown, was only beaten ahead by Champagne Platinum at Goran. And then he was only beaten 3/4 of a length by Mousy Brown at Down Royal. Now, Mousy Brown actually went on to win a listed handicap hurdle at Fairyhouse next time. So that form looks pretty strong. He's 131 rated chaser now as well. So I think he's got plenty of good form in the book. Obviously, he's behind Tune in the Tune in the Box at the Punchestown Festival as well. Some nice runs. If he's ready to go first time up, then I think he's got a good chance in that. And then probably my best bet of the day actually comes in the last, where Belhamba runs for Harry Durham. Now, this horse was, again, very progressive in handicaps last season for Harry, as you would expect with how he's been operating. He won 2 handicaps at Ludlow and Bangor, and then at Huntingdon in April, Connections thought he went off 4-6 favourite to complete the hat trick. Connections thought it was an absolute good thing. He ended up running into Pick a Number. He obviously went on to win the Swinton handicap hurdle next time out by 15 lengths, absolutely bolted up off 1-2-1 that day. He went up to 1-3-6 before being sold. I think that Balhamba's on a really nice mark for 117 now, considering that form where he was actually trying to give Pick a Number £3 as well. So it's not like he was getting a bunch of weight off that horse. He was giving him weight. Only just went down in second. Really good performance. He's off 117, and the best thing is he had a split on the flat as well in October. He went to Newbury, finished third. Very good run there. First time pieces go on. Paul O'Brien's on board. I think everything lines up for him to run a really big race.
Okay, good stuff, Jake. Belhamba in the first time headgear combination. I'm going to actually take you on in that race, the Clap of Thunder. No real surprise there from either of you, but again, I will bring up the fact that I went to Nigel Tristan Davis's yard the other day, and of all the horses in the yard, Sam said to me that Clap of Thunder, when he came to the yard and they first got hold of him, he was the most exciting at the time. He's been disappointing to an extent, didn't quite prove himself up to winning a bumper. However, he showed what he can do at Ascot on Hurdle's debut of the day. And given the way they think about him, given what they think about him, given how good they think he is, I reckon a mark of 120 could easily be very, very lenient. So I'd be keen on Clap of Thunder now that he seems to be putting it all together and had that confidence-boosting win at Ascot at the beginning of the month. Dan, what about you rest of Friday?
Yeah, there's some tricky handicaps there, as you mentioned. I mean, the opening one, the Conditional Jockeys race, a good few interesting ones in there. I did think Plaisir de Flow, who would not normally be my type of horse at all, because anything that normally has a long string of ones in lower class races, that's like repellent to me. I immediately look elsewhere. But quite frankly, this horse has been taking the absolute mick in handicaps over intermediate trips since he switched to the yard. I mean, you look at some of the races that he's winning class 5s, but some of the form is quite ludicrous, actually. You go back to Wincanton in March, he beat Jasmine de Grugy, and they pulled 28 lengths clear of the rest. Plaisir de Flow's gone up £27 since. Jasmine de Grugy's gone up £35. So he's actually been beating and handicap snips at a lower level and has continued to do so. Like, he's been weak as hell in the market at Carlisle when we last saw him against Mr. Hope Street, who was another one who was upwardly mobile. He was very well backed. He absolutely sauntered into this race and won on the hands and heels. Like, it was comfortable, whereas Mr. Hope Street was getting the absolute full treatment to try and win because obviously the money was down, and Plaisir de Flow literally just came there. Jack Hogan was almost giving it a little wave as he was going on by and really didn't have to get all that serious. Gone up another £7 for that, but I do like the fact he's been winning on all sorts of tracks. like left-handed, right-handed, undulating, flat. Like it's a real mix. And so I know he's going to be there towards the top of the market with a series of ones next to his name. But Jack Hogan knows him well. I'd say that he could still have a few pounds in hand based on what I've been seeing so far. He'll hit his limit eventually, but I'm not sure he's hit it just about yet. And there's a few in here. I think it's free running under a penalty. So it's a hot race with a lot of recent form. So he'd be a tentative each way bet. And then I will just give a mention to Fassal in that final race. I think this is going to be a really quality novice handicap hurdle. I wouldn't be overly strong on a lot of things because I think the two you guys have mentioned would be top of the list as well. Reckless Eric looked like he was going really well when he fell last time out, and I think he's probably got a fair bit of mileage in that mark. This race can often be a bit of a mess. Like it's been won by some 33-1 shots who've been bang out of form, but I think this year we've got a good renewal of it. Fassal is clearly well handicapped. I mean, he's off a mark 108. He's rated 100 on the flat. He was in my winners once to watch series. To be honest, I had him more in mind for the likes of Wincanton and Taunton rather than Cheltenham. I think those will be more his areas based on his flat ability, but off a mark of 108, he is hard to ignore. The market hasn't missed him. He's at the top of the market. It seems like he's got cheek pieces on, which I've looked through it all. It isn't flagged as first time, but I can't find any history of him wearing cheek pieces recently. And again, that would be a bit of a negative for me on just third hurdle start. The cheek pieces are on. So if he comes to an each way backable price, I may have a little bet. But to be honest, I think that last race is very hot, and I'll be keeping an eye on it with a view to future races.
That's Friday done thus. So let's move on to Saturday, shall we? We're going to start with the 145. It's the Arkle Trial, and we haven't got declarations at the time of recording, which is a bit of a shame, but at the same time, I think we can have a pretty good idea of what's going to run. The top of the market is Lodu Sud for the Skelton team. Was quite impressive, really, at Stratford on his debut of offences quite recently, 7-4. He is currently in the market. And I think he's probably a fair favourite. Iberico Lord is in there 4-1. Jordans for the O'Brien team got to carry a penalty. Before I come to, I'll come straight back to Dan. Before I do, I'm just going to put up my thoughts on this. There's a horse called Western Zephyr who's entered in this, but also entered in a handicap elsewhere on the weekend at Cheltenham. And I really hope he goes down the handicap route, but I don't think he's going to be good enough to win this Arkle Trial, particularly as Lodi Sud probably going to go forward. Western Zephyr likes to do that. But what I would say is, mark of 130, I think he's well handicapped. Goodness me, he was impressive at Carlisle. Like, he was so impressive. He jumped unbelievably well. Like, for a novice, he was just exceptional in the jumping department. So I'd be very keen on him in the handicap company. I think he might just get outclassed at this level. But he went up £7 for that victory. I think it could have been any more than that because it was really impressive. And Sean Byrne attacked every fence with him. So I'm looking forward to seeing him at the weekend, but I just hope he doesn't run in this race. Dan, what do you think?
It could be quite a good race. Obviously, we're, as you say, we're doing it before decks, and if so, a lot of these turn up. We'd be in for a real treat if Loda Sud, Berico Lord, Look Away, and Co all come over. Then it'll be an interesting affair and an interesting tactical one as well. Because as you mentioned, if Western Zephyr comes here, he's obviously a forward goer. Loda Sud went forward on his chase debut, more out of sufferance because he was just a class above everything else in that race. Look Away, we know he's only ever really made the running, did so over hurdles, obviously won that match race with Personal Ambition on his chase debut. I mean, Loda Sud for me is the most exciting long-term prospect. I've obviously been a fan of his for a long time. The price currently at 7-4 is too short when you compare it to the likes of Look Away at 8-1. Like, that is just too big of a discrepancy, especially as at time of recording, the good ground is maybe throwing Loda Sud's participation into some question. I don't think he'd have a massive issue with good ground. I think him, Look Away, and a lot of these are quite ground versatile, but like we know Loda Sud handles soft ground really well. So whether they want to risk him here, bearing in mind they missed a couple of engagements and ended up at Stratford because they were avoiding good ground, remains to be seen. Facile Mode, I think, would be a very interesting one, maybe with a view to spring handicaps. Not sure he'd be necessarily up to beating the likes of a Loda Sud on levels of this kind of preparation, but he's one to keep an eye on. He may well be maybe a Grand Annual type or a decent handicap over in Ireland. Could be a really good race. If you were forcing me to have a bet right now, it'd be Look Away 8-1 because 7-4 Loda Sud, 8-1 Look Away. That just seems too big.
Yeah. Okay, Dan. Good stuff. I think the other one that's probably worth a mention as well is Primoz, who was a good winner for Lucinda Russell over defences last time. Jake, what about you in terms of the race in general?
Yeah, I pretty much echo Dan's thoughts, to be honest. Loda Sud is probably the best long-term project here. Maybe a Berico Lord as well. You could throw them both in there as being top-class prospects. Loda Sud, I just have this gripe of they've been avoiding good ground the whole of October. Found a small little race for him where it wasn't as bad, and now they're potentially going to run him in a Grade 2 on good ground where it's definitely going to be good. I don't know. I would definitely say that he's a horse who prefers softer ground. Perhaps he doesn't need it, but that would be my concern with him at 7-4. I'd be more than happy to leave it. Obviously, he may end up being a non-run on this. Might all be futile anyway, but we will see with that. As Dan said, look away at the prices. Currently, it is the bet in the race. His Chase debut, I thought, was very good. He beat Personal Ambition. Obviously, is one of my horse handicappers to follow. Thought it was a good performance from both horses that day. Personal Ambition obviously couldn't go up in the handicap for finishing second in a novice chase either, so that was nice to see. I thought that Look Away did put in a good performance there. Iberica Lord, I think, needs softer ground as well. So yeah, everything looks in Look Away's favour here, and at the prices, he'd be my bet.
Okay, Jake, good stuff. That is the Arkle Trial. The 220 is the big race of Saturday, and probably the big race of the weekend too. It's the Paddy Power Gold Cup, and a likely big field, and a competitive one too, as it always is. Jake, I'll come back to you for this. At the moment, Ginny's Destiny ahead of the market 3-1, and then we got the likes of Garlaw. Good to see him back. Imagine first start by Harry Derham. Il Ridotto. Imagine, of course, and yeah, Imagine was obviously one of the Corwell dispersal horses. Have we had one of them win a race since yet, Jake? What's the story there?
Now you're putting me on the spot, aren't you?
I think one has won.
I was thinking about this earlier. I don't think we have, actually. I can't recall one having been sold and then winning yet, but I could be wrong. And
they've definitely not won a high-profile race, have they?
No. A few have run all right. Like Safra obviously ran okay in the Grand Annual in fourth. But it hasn't been. I think there's someone who does on Twitter who does like a return on investment chart for all of them, which I mean is not, doesn't really paint it in a good light. But obviously a lot of them are currently minus 100% because a lot of them haven't run or won any money. But yeah, it hasn't been great for those who have purchased it, and it does look good for the seller.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
Go on, Jake. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, it's all good. Imagine's obviously very interesting in here. I think the main problem I've had is he's never run on good ground before, which is obviously going to be a big negative coming into a race like this. Obviously, he might handle it absolutely fine, but it's just one of those unknowns you'd have to take with him. Ginny's Destiny, I think he's a good horse. I'm more than happy to take him on at the prices. He's 11-4, 3-1 type price. I think that's just too short for a race like this. He's off a mark of 155, which is, it's not a gimme. It doesn't, it's not badly handicapped, but it's not a gimme, that's for sure. He's been beaten first time out the last 2 seasons. And again, he's a horse who has preferred softer ground historically. So more than happy to take him on. It is a tricky race, that you can land it, multiple different ways. I think Il Ridotto is going to be one of my bets because just purely on a handicapping point of view, he's on a really nice mark now. He's down to 138. He's going to be £3 out in the handicap if Protectorate runs, but Freddie Gingle is going to take off that £3. So he's basically off his mark of 138, which is great. Obviously, his last win came off 138 at Trials Day in 2023. Since then, he's just been running some brilliant races, hasn't he? Obviously, he was third in the race last year behind Stage Star, but that was first time out. I think that's probably the biggest difference this year. He then went to the December meeting where somehow we got beat by Fugitive. That was a very, very tough beat to take that day. But it was obviously a good performance nonetheless. I think his season kind of fell off a little bit after Trials Day last year where, he ran a really good race behind Garlaw in third. He just was badly handicapped at that point. But as I said, he's back down to 138 now. And he's had the prep run at Chepstow. I think that's probably the most important part of all of this. He's a horse who badly needs his first run every time. So he's had that now. I think that puts him in good stead. And I'll give a small shout to an Excelsis Day as well. I think that good ground is definitely come his way. He's ran loads of eye-catching races in the past. He finally got the job done in April. They went over for the Galway Plate where he just completely missed the start, was always on the back foot and just never got into the contest. So I'd happily put a line through that. I think he's a decent each way bet around 10-1.
Yeah, good stuff. Jake, I can see that argument completely. Dan, what about you for one of the big handicap chases of the season?
Yeah, now this is a race I would typically overcomplicate, and I'd go down the list and find something at 50-1 and try and convince myself. And the one who is the most interesting of the outsiders is Madara, just because there's all sorts of stuff going on with him, because he's now with Dan Skelton, he's now jocked up, had been with Kieran Berg at the start of the season, obviously was a very useful handicap chaser last season over 2 miles. Keep an eye on him. they'll find a race for him, whether it's December, whether it's January. The additions of this race, as we know, the form always creeps back up. He'll be out the back, he'll plot round, and we'll see. And yeah, I'd be keeping a real firm eye on Madara with a view to the future. I just kept coming back to Ginny's Destiny, and I get the point around good ground. I get the point around his record first time out. But obviously, last time it was his first run for Paul Nicholls, and he was very clear that this horse needed the run desperately. Like, he was never going to be, he was not fit at all first time out. They were still learning about him. I can completely forgive the fact he was beaten then, obviously turned inside out thereafter. A Mark 155, as you say, it's never looking like a gift in races like this, but you go back to that run in the Turners where he, Grey Dawning and Jello just battled it for 2.5 miles up front, but all jumped really well. Ultimately, Jello couldn't live with them. Obviously, he ran really well in the Holden Gold Cup the other day, rated 149. Grey Dawning, everyone seems to think he'll win the Betfair Chase, and that's been the real talking point. So if you're taking all of that literally, you kind of have to think that a Mark 155 in a company like this is going to be fairly accessible. Is he the greatest price in the world? No, but I like the fact he's going to have the run style to suit. As we know him, he's a forward-going type. He'll jump well. He's an extremely sound jumper. And in the absence of anything else that really appealed to me as like an unexposed type potentially coming up, like I see Eldorado, he is well handicapped. I just wonder again, would he have more of a December, January type profile in the end? In Excelsior Day, I've never been convinced by his jumping in a real quality field. I think the race in April kind of fell into his lap because it wasn't as good a race. Then you've got the likes of Let's Go Champion, but has potential to protect her out off a big weight. Imagine, I can't really weigh up, although he is technically a qualifier for the Harry Derham first time out in a handicap system, which is now operating at a 58% strike rate. I just couldn't find another angle into the race that really appealed to me. So I've come back to Ginny's Destiny. I don't think the price is great. It's not one I'd say, yeah, it's an absolute huge bet. I'd almost be hoping and probably be expecting a slight drift, I think, because a lot of people are going to look at that record on good ground, look at that record first time out fresh. So I haven't backed him yet. I'll be very much monitoring the price on the day. And if he gets out to about 4 to 192, I think that'll be a decent enough price.
Okay, Dan, good stuff. Ginny's Destiny for you. I'm going to go at a bit of a price actually each way, and I'm expecting the laugh to come here. A bit of an each way price. Straw Fan Jack, who I think he's got his ground.
I bagged him for one of these races, I think, the other year. He barely, he was awful the entire way. Then he ran an absolute stormer at the plate. I was like, well, what on earth happened there? Because it was a good ground when I backed him, and he was useless. He turns up on heavy ground in the plate and runs a stormer at a massive price. So he's been on the naughty list ever since then. Well,
I don't blame you, because I mean, all his good form before that suggests good ground is what he wants. And yeah, a bit of an anomaly running well on soft. But if good ground is what he wants, which most of his form suggests that it is, then I think he's a big player here, because quite a few of these won't be suited by the ground, and he definitely will be. No doubt, I know that Sheila Lewis wouldn't be well known for being a target trainer as such, but there is no doubt that he's been trained for this contest. He gets in towards the bottom of the weight. He's £2 higher than that run in the plate, which was an absolute belter, as Dan said, only beaten by 2 horses in a 21 runner field. And I think this better ground, I think it's going to be better for him at least, will help him kind of get those £2 and hopefully be bang there at the finish. But I mean, he might not win, but I think he'll run a good race. And he's quite a big price, 25 to 1, given that, conditions will suit and he ran so well in the plate. So he'd be a pick for me in that race, but it's always really competitive, isn't it? He's got a nice low weight, which helps. So Straw Fan Jack for me. Okay, that's the big race done on the day. The 255 is the Class 2 handicap hurdle. Very open this. I know that Skyjack Hijack's got an entry at Haydock as well. Dan, not sure which one he's more likely to go for. If he does go here, I mean, despite the fact he's won everything recently, he looks pretty open this race.
It does say he's got that entry in the Big Stairs handicap hurdle. I think a few of these actually have that entry. It tends to be the way Dwayne Quest as well is another one at the top of the market who has that entry, and he'd be a pretty strong selection for me here, despite, I don't know if Skyjack Hijack will run just 8 days after Exeter. Maybe the ground in their favour. They might take their chance. He's had a lot of racing. But Dwayne Quest, for me, I think he was a massive improver towards the back end of last season when he improved for the experience and better ground. All of his form is working out, to be honest. You look at Steel Ally Imperial Saint, who he beat at Newbury. So we've seen Steel Ally, what he's done since. He went to that 2 mile handicap at Sandown, then ran in the Welsh Champion Hurdle. Imperial Saint has been imperious over fences thus far. Then went to the April meeting, over 2.5 miles. Messy race, bit of a sprint. He came from off the pace to win it and stayed on really well, which I like. Second in the Silver Trophy when last seen. Again, held up. The winner made all. I think the winner had a finishing speed of about 109, 110%. He very much benefited from the way that race panned out, and Dwayne Quest was the only horse to even remotely threaten the winner on that occasion, and that form is continuing to work out really strongly. Lowry's Bar finishing second today, as we're time of recording, in the latest boost for that race. So every reason to expect the £3 rise is not going to limit his progress, because he still looks on a steep upward curve, in form, bred to improve for 3 miles. He is also in the 2 mile 5 race, but he's always been jocked up for the 3 mile race. And I think they have Major Fortune, who's always been jocked up for the 2 mile 5 race. So I'd hope he goes here. He's currently 5-1. I think that's fair enough. And he'd be one of my stronger fancies for the weekend.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, the Skeleton team have got such a strong squad going to Cheltenham this weekend. What about you, Jake, for that race?
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, I put up Doing Quest for the Silver Trophy at Chepstow. Ran a cracker. Obviously just found one horse too good. Joshua Bosch was obviously ready for the day to his life and went and won it well. But Doing Quest, as Dan said, was the only one chasing him home. So, yeah, looks like a strong piece of form. Tighten our belts. Lowry's Bar. American Sniper, loads of horses come out back to authority as well. All come out the race. Yeah, and won since. So yeah, the form looks strong. He's still off on a mark of 125, which I think is lenient. And yeah, he gets his good ground here. And Dan Skelton did say in a stable tour recently he can't wait to try and move 3 miles. So I'm assuming this will be his nominated race. And if he does turn up here, yeah, it'd be a very strong bet for me.
Okay, nicely done. Let's move on to the 3:30, the final race we're going to look at in detail on the Saturday, the Paddy Intermediate Handicap Hurdle. At the moment, the market looks like this. 5-1 Doing Quest in there again. Plaisir de Flow, we already mentioned as well, is in there at 7-1. So a few options for some of these. Dan, come to you for this one. Is there one you fancy here?
To be honest, no. I think it's really tricky. A few of these, as you say, have ulterior entries, but I mean, Plaisir de Flow's already been declared, so you expect him not to go there. Obviously, Doing Quest, if you do like something at Ante-Post price, considering Doing Quest is currently favourite and looks favoured for the 3 mile race, maybe a chance to get involved there and maybe nick a bit of a price. Thought it was really tough. I think you have to be interested in Beat the Bat. He's the only horse to really give Dysart Enos a race. Long absence to overcome. Clearly had an issue there after. Is the mark 132 really a gift? Wouldn't necessarily be convinced about it, but still a horse with a lot of progress to resume. Champagne Twist, obviously a very solid handicap form towards the back end of last season. Found it quite tough to weigh up, to be honest, and nothing I really fancy strongly at the minute. Okay,
and Jake, what about you for that intermediate handicap hurdle?
Yeah, so I've obviously always been a big fan of Champagne Twist, but I do kind of worry that he won the EBF final due to just being ridiculously well handicapped. He was off a mark of 124 that day. Obviously won the race well in the end. But then he went to Aintree, where he was punted into 5-1 co-favourite off his mark of 131 that he still has now. And he just never really got into the race, well beaten into 9th place. Perhaps it was just one run too many. And after, a fairly lengthy season, a lot of Ben Pauling seemed to fall off in their final start of the year. But, as I said, he's unchanged off a mark of 131 now. So he's going to need to improve to be able to win a race like this. The horse that I actually do quite like here is the one Dan mentioned in Beat the Bat. Obviously, as Dan said, his mark of 132 is not a gift. It's probably just exactly where he's run to in his career. He's, was beaten Cigarette Papers by Masaccio, who's rated 131, got the better of Welcome to Cartrees, who's 130. And then he was obviously second behind Dysart Enos, who's 131. So he's pretty much ran to 130 every single time he's run. If he runs to the same level here, I can see him going very close. Obviously, he had an issue, so we didn't get to see him how he matched up against the rest of them in, races such as the EBF final or Aintree or Cheltenham. We didn't get to see that with him. So we still got that unexposed potential of being much better than them. And yeah, obviously he's over his absence now. He was off for an injury. Harry Fry didn't actually state what the injury was in his stable tour, but he said he's over that now, obviously ready to go first time up. So yeah, I'd be with Beat the Bat. I think he's got a great chance around 8-1 at the minute. I'd imagine that was shortened just purely because of non-runners.
Okay, good stuff. Beat the Bat there for Jake. I'll put forward one there that I quite like, whatever race he goes for. He's got 3 entries on Saturday. Major Fortune, I thought was so impressive at Newton Abbott last time for the Skeleton team. The way that he came into the race from behind and picked up what was quite a well-fancied horse and just breezed past. I thought marked him out as a horse who'd have loads more to come. And that was only a Class 4 and completely different ground conditions this time. That'll probably be the main question mark, I suppose, back on good ground today. But he's been mostly campaigned and soft and heavy, so hasn't had too many chances to show what he can do on good ground. So given the way he went through the race last time, I'd be hopeful that he's going to run well wherever he goes. So keep an eye on Major Fortune. Saturday, rest of the card. Jake, come back to you for this.
Yeah, I'll just flag an interesting one. Obviously, Dan has already mentioned Imagine being one of the first time out handicappers for Harry Durham. He's also got Come On Teddy in the amateur race. It's not a race that historically is fun to punt in, but Barry O'Neill has been booked for the ride all week. So yet again, Harry Durham is not messing around. He's got one of the best amateurs around to get on his horse. It got to have a chance, with that improvement if Harry Durham can find it. Elsewhere, Primrose or Primoz, however you say it, if he doesn't run at Cheltenham, he's got a couple of entries at Wetherby. I'd be keen to back him wherever he turns up. Probably end up being too short for a bet, but that's one to keep an eye on. And then Lady in the Park is in the 320 at Wetherby as well. I thought she ran a cracker on her debut. That form has been boosted by Hurler on the Ditch winning this week as well. So, yeah, if she can step forward from that debut run, then I think she's a nicely handicapped mare, and 3 miles is probably what she wants.
Okay, good stuff. And Dan, what about you the rest of Saturday?
Yeah, there's a few interesting ones. Obviously, in the mare's bumper, one of the eye catchers I put up a few weeks ago was Strong Run. After she finished ludicrously eye-catching second in that mare's bumper to a stablemate. I mean, Fergal has 4 in here, and they're all jocked up with Jonathan Burke on, so that doesn't exactly make life easy when it comes to assessing which one is going to run. But if she does run here, I think because of she didn't win, and the fact that I think it looks like Willie Mullins is going to send one over, there might be a few Irish horses. I think she'd be hopefully an each-way price, and this is a mare with a lot of ability. Fergal's targeted this race in the past and had some decent places in it as well in recent years. And then 120 at Uttoxeter, because naturally, where else would you go? Barley Body, very likely race for his age, returned after a long absence towards the start of last season when he was third to Not Sure and Snowy Evening. Some Scope was in fifth. The latter 2 of those went on to frank that form. Then finished third in a Class 2 at Haydock to Famous Bridge and Credo, who were then first and third in the Tommy Whittle on their next start on a very workable looking mark of 118, down to into a 0 to 120. I think generally speaking, the Richard Newland and Jamie Insole team have started the year very well in comparison to previous seasons. So if he's fit and ready to go, and he seems to be the type who can go well fresh, I think he'd take a fair bit of beating in that 120.
Okay, that's Saturday done and dusted. On to Sunday. You're going to start by looking at the Southern Handicap Chase over 2 miles. First thing that struck me is the return of third time lucky. First start for Fergal O'Brien. We haven't seen him for 584 days, but he's back, baby, and he's back as a 9-year-old. Dan, back to you for this. Who do you fancy in the race? I'm going to go ahead and assume it's not third time lucky.
No, that would be a fair assessment of my initial feeling, but a horse that evoked a lot of emotion because I think the world was forward of him and the world was at his feet, and then he just turned into a real disappointment. He almost just teased everyone start after start, and you thought, oh no, he'll come on for that. Didn't have his conditions there. This is the right. Oh no, he bombed out again. So I mean, good luck. I mean, obviously improving any horse from the Skeltons is a tough gig, I would suggest. So let's see what they can do with him. Again, at the minute, I mean, the fact that Petit Tonnerre was favourite for a race make me. Again, you have to look at anything else really based on his winning record. But then you see Liberty Hunter, who could absolutely win this quite comfortably. I just can't get the yard right ever. To put it kindly, I just don't. If he's there to win, he could win this very easily because he's still a horse with a lot of scope off 144. Calico, I think, was absolutely gunned to win in October. The market told you that. He was really well backed throughout, and obviously got the better of Matata, who I think was ready for that day. But I think naturally he's always ready for every day because he probably gets himself so fit at home trying to escape. So if Matata, I mean, he was entered in the race with Jonbon in as well, obviously in the Shloer. And so was Massachusetts. Neither went. So I think Matata would almost be inclined to go here. Maybe he might get more of a free lead this time. Didn't get that with Dancing on My Own, who pestered him the entire way. So I think even though Matata obviously got beat, I actually really liked the way he battled because I think I thought he was beat turning for 2 out and thought I was going to finish 10 lengths behind. He only got beat very narrowly in the end. So that showed a new side to him that I respected. Even though he's gone up £3 for that, I think again if he gets perhaps a bit more of an assertive ride, gets that solo lead, I would give another chance to Matata. I know the Mark 150 demands a fair bit, but these 2 mile handicap races are quite specialist, and he's a proper 2 mile specialist.
Yeah, good arguments put forward there, Dan. I'm going to actually put forward one myself. General Madrano, I quite like. 7-year-old Chaser, still got plenty of scope. Hasn't been seen for a while, but he won off a big break last season back at Uttoxeter after 162 days off. He won really easily. Looked like a chase to follow that day. It didn't really work out for the rest of the season. He won again, then came second, but after that it was all a little bit tough for him. However, as a result of that, he has dropped to a decent mark. and he'll love the ground too. So I think there's a lot in the favour of Gian Madrano, as well as the fact that Emma Lavell's horses are running quite well too. I think her last three horses have all finished place second or third, and she had a winner last week too. So I think 129 will definitely see Gian Madrano well handicapped at some stage. Given the fact he's won off a break, I'd be keen on him. Around about 10-1 mark. What about you then, Jake, for this?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a system going where I'm backing horses who finished second for me last month and should have won. And I think Matata is one of those horses. Obviously, if Liberty Hunter did turn up, he would be hard to beat, especially if it rained. I think that's probably the big thing. I don't think he'll even turn up if it doesn't rain at any point. I think there was some forecast. I don't know if it still is. I haven't been able to check it before we started here, but if
a little bit.
Ground, yeah,
it's kind of coming the afternoon is how it's been. It's been all that is about
Right.
5 mil is predicted Sunday afternoon, but
yeah,
who knows?
so that'll probably be too late for him. I'd say he's unlikely to turn up if that is the case. But yeah, Matata, I said before the race, I think he's often too hard on himself, and he probably needs some breaks between his races. But I actually don't think he was that hard on himself the last day. He got hassled for the lead, obviously, by Dancing on My Own, and he's did so well to battle back up that hill when Calico went by. As Dan said, we were expecting him to fall in an absolute hole. He's only beaten, not that far in the end. Gone up for £3. That's fair enough. If he can just get an uncontested lead here, and he can just be a bit braver at his fences, Daryl kept on asking him up to go for a jump, and he just kept on putting down, which really lost him momentum against obviously a horse who was hassling him on the lead. So if he can get that right, Sam Austin-Davies is probably going to be on because Daryl Jacobs now injured. That will obviously be a big help because Sam will throw the kitchen sink at him, and that will be exactly what he needs, I think, to get the job done.
Oh, I love it. Well, it's just tremendous to listen to you both at the top of your game. It really is. Let's go on to 255.
He says that I choked to death. I was so shocked by a compliment. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, that's brilliant. The 255 is the extended 3-mile 3 handicap, Chase Premier handicap. I haven't got much of a view on this other than the fact I think High Mac will probably run well for Brian Carver, Harry Fry. I think he's got a lot in his favour, but I don't know, it's very competitive. I hope Does He Know runs well because I'm a big fan of his, loves Cheltenham. I'm just a little bit worried about him these days getting he's only 9, but he feels like he's been around for years. Dan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, and you had to admire the run last time out, really. I looked at this race quite a lot, and again, it's another race I kept looking down the list. There has to be something. And then again, I just thought, well, why am I ignoring the obvious? And Does He Know again? I know you said you're worried about him, but especially if Nassalam runs and keeps the weights down, so he's not carrying top weight again, I don't see why he wouldn't have an outstanding chance. Because you look at that race in October, it was far deeper than this. Like, to me, this is a race full of middle of the road handicappers. There's a few exceptions in there who I think are a bit more uncertain. Like the likes of Victorino is clearly very talented, but is he going to run? Are they getting him back to Ascot? Probably wants softer ground. But I think for the most part, when you're looking at a market that's headed by Buffalo Soldier, High Mac, Surrey Quest, Ballygriffin Cottage, who a horse I used to love but just hates winning, and just finds 4 miles too much, 3 miles too sharp. Maybe this is the ideal trip then really for him. But a lot of middling handicappers or horses with questions to answer. Whereas Does He Know? We know generally how he's going to perform. Obviously, he had a bit of an engaged battle with Broadway Boy in the front last time out. I don't necessarily see as many pace angles here. Again, a Buffalo Soldier goes forward. I don't think really many of these horses really want to get into in battle with Does He Know? He ran really well. I mean, the fact that Broadway Boy only finished narrowly ahead of him, I think speaks volumes to the performance he put in. There is no other type of horse that's going to just sweep past him like we saw in October. So this is a weaker race. He's dropped to a mark 150. Obviously won this off 152 in 2022. Won the Grimforth off 149. Ground's in his favour. I say if Nassalam runs as well, I'd be very, very keen on his chances. But he's just that reliable type. You know how he's going to run generally. And I think that's quite valuable in a race like this.
I'd love to see him win. And of course, he does love Cheltenham. So fingers crossed down for Does He Know. Jake, what about you?
Yeah, I can definitely see the case for him. Obviously, we won't go into any more detail on that. Good chase being by you both. Surrey Quest was the other one I thought was quite interesting here. He was progressive as a chaser last season. Obviously, he won at Huntington first time out, which was a good performance, beating Storming Home, who's one of those nearly horses, but he always seems to run a decent race. He then went to Newbury and followed up, where he beat Atlanta Brave, who I thought was absolutely laid out for that race, and he managed to go on and score well there. Didn't do so well at Doncaster in a competitive race in January, the old Sky bet there, but Ayr obviously ran in Scottish National, was only beaten on nose by McDermott. He's gone at £4 for that, which is probably not very harsh, is it, for considering he was running in a national race? 3 mile, 3 furlongs around Cheltenham should be ideal for him. I think the only question mark is if they actually want to win this or if they're prepping him for, future targets. But 8-1's a decent price, and he looks like one of the few progressive horses in the race.
Yeah, there aren't many, that's for sure. Good stuff. Let's move on to the final race we're going to cover in detail. It's the Unibet Greatwood Handicap Hurdle. 100 grand prize money up for grabs. Always really competitive. Will we see Dysart Enos? I know that she's going for the race, but until she actually arrives, I am not going to count my chickens. Not seen for 294 days, but I do hope she goes there because she still remains very exciting in my view. Burdett Road is 5-1 second favourite, and then there's a few others in there towards sort of single figures, not many though. Go Dante at around about 9-10-1. Jake, I'll come straight back to you with the big handicap hurdle of the weekend.
Yeah, this is a race obviously where we got two at the top of the market who look to have really strong claims based on their form and their handicap ratings. Dysart Enos and Burdett Road, obviously the two. I'd probably be with Dysart Enos out of the pair. I think that she's so unexposed. It's such a shame she obviously had missed her engagement of the Mares Novice, etc. That would have been so good to see her in that race. It would have probably made it one of the best Mares Novice we would have seen had she ran. But yeah, so she's got so much potential. I can definitely see the angle of her. Obviously, she's really short in a big handicap like this, so she will not be the way I probably end up playing it. But I can definitely see the angle there. If she drifts out, I'll be getting involved. Under Control, I think, is actually one of the most interesting in here for me. She's around the 10-1 mark, which I think is a very fair price. I just don't think she was ever truly right last season. I'm hoping that they've got her in better order this time round. Newbury, obviously, when she came back in the Jerry and that was just bizarre. She then split Ashford Diamond and Gala Marceau, who are two 140s mares. Obviously, that's a really nice performance. But then after running in that race, she missed both the Betfair hurdle and the Moor Battle hurdle. And, for the Moor Battle hurdle, she was a really strong favourite. I think she was going to go off a very short price that day. Ended up being pulled out. According to Nicky Henderson's stable tour, she went back to Martinstown early. She was then brought back for a tilt at the Galway hurdle, which I thought was a very odd move considering how the season's gone, but I guess they were trying to make up for lost time. She ran well for a really long way that day, just faded at the top of the hill, really, finishing sixth. And then she returned to Martinstown after that to have another break before coming back into training again for the season ahead. So, yeah, I'm hoping they've got her ready to go first time up. I think she's almost falling into forgotten horse territory to a sense, because I think if she was running in this race first time up last season, she would have gone off a very short price. So yeah, you're getting the price for a year older horse that hopefully is mature, developed, and yeah, hopefully she can go really well for the Nicky Henderson team. And then I'll just give a really small quick mention to Black Poppy at around 40-1. He's another horse who had his season derailed last year. He was second behind Archamp at Cheltenham before then finishing fourth behind Constitution Hill in the Grade 1 Christmas hurdle. His season then was cut short there. He was bled from the nose that day at Kempton, despite running a really nice race. They brought him back for the summer hurdle. I assume they did similar things to what they did with Under Control there. Ran well for a really long way, finished a decent fifth. But he's a horse who can travel really well into a strong pace. Hopefully this is going to be a strong pace. He's going to love good ground if it stays good. And yeah, I just think that at 40-1, he can probably hit a frame, when other horses are crying enough. Hopefully he'll be staying on.
Yeah, good stuff, Jake. Some nice arguments made there, I have to say. And yeah, big price, Black Poppy. Decent price too for Under Control. Jake, what about you for the Greatwood?
Back to you, Jake.
I'll go again, shall I?
Yeah. Was it not clear enough the
Jake,
first time?
I loved it so much. I'd love to hear him say it again.
Yeah, Under Control, Tom.
It's fine. I'll sit here. I'll mute my mic. You go again.
Go on, Dio. It's gone.
With pleasure. I agree on Dysart Enos versus Burdett Road. I'd definitely be with the mare rather than Burdett. I get the angle for Burdett Road, but does he jump well enough in a big race like this? Because he was very sticky all the time in his juvenile hurdles, and he kind of got away with it. To remember that turn of foot at the November meeting last year, obviously, which he demonstrated when he came from off the pace. Still one of the most visually impressive things I've seen, but he got put in his place by Sergino. Very good flat horse. Everyone's looking at that flat mark and thinking, oh, well, he has to be well handicapped, but I'd struggle about his ability to hold his position if he doesn't jump well enough in the early stages. And as we know, if you get off the pace in these 2-mile good ground handicaps around Cheltenham on the old course, can just get away from you, and he could just find it all a bit too much to do in a race of this nature. So that would be my concern with him. Completely see the case for Under Control. I did look at her a lot as well. say it's all very valid. Obviously, you go back to a lot of her form, she still looks very well handicapped. Just the big weight, maybe a slight concern as well. Obviously, not the biggest filly in the world. They have expressed that a bit of a concern. I guess if you're going to do it any time, good ground is going to be better than soft. So can see that one. I think it's going to work out to be a good renewal. I think those towards, say, the bottom of the market, I think will all go on to win races. I think Florida Dreams, we haven't seen the best of him. Royal Way, they think a lot of him, probably wants softer ground. There's a lot of interesting ones in here. Obviously, which Emmett Mullins horse is going to be the gamble is another fun subplot to play. I'd say Jacobet Cavan, probably the favourite to win that race based on just profile and bookings. So that will be another subplot. Be Aware, I have to mention, because he's one of my handicappers to follow. He's actually already gone up £2 a season because of the form lines of that Sandown race working out so well, as partly expected. I think there's a lot of potential with this horse. I just am slightly concerned about 2 miles good ground. Is he going to be streetwise enough and quick enough? I thought that 2 mile 4 race that Camden ended up winning was going to be an early season target. Ends up being a horse that's already beaten Be Aware that goes on to win the race. A cruel twist of fate. And I'm getting Suckerdeck into a grey horse running in this first time out again, just like Lotus Sud last year. And like Lotus Sud, obviously disappointed. I can see him going on to have a really good campaign. And I probably will back Be Aware each way because I can see him just staying on, maybe not having the pace to lay up, but keeping on at the one pace. But really tough race. I'm happy to let Dysart Enoch win at the prices. Fair play. A lot of people have been banging on this for a long time, and she does look a clear blip. But at the prices each way, I'd probably go Be Aware, but it wouldn't be a massive stakes.
Okay, good stuff, Dan. I'm going to put forward a little bit of an each way selection on Teddy Blue to try and increase your stats with Harry Derham handicap as first time we are.
I will just mention on that stat, Bully. So I dug into this deeper. So I think if he's up to 15 winners, I think 13 or more are a class 4 level or below. I think it's one at class 2, one at class 3. I think the rest are at class 4 or class 5. So it does have a bit of a class bias. So not such great news for Imagine and Teddy Blue.
It would be some training performance to get him to win.
Oh, it would, yeah.
So, yeah, but he'd be my pick in what is a really good race. Okay, guys, anything else for Sunday? Dan, come to you.
Yeah, one in the Troy Town. I think Jake's probably a fan of his as well. American Mike, obvious one, head of the market, but this just looks a clear bit of a Rick, really. Obviously, Gordon's won 6 of the last 10. It's a bit farcical. I think he's got half the entries. So, I mean, it's really a bit of a joke. But, I mean, Jack Kennedy's been under no illusion which horse he's going to ride. Mark 145, you look at bits of his form, looks extremely lenient, goes well fresh, is a bit temperamental, admittedly, and maybe wants it a bit softer. But if he turns up on a going day, he'll make a Mark 145 look pretty lenient. And I think he's still 5-1. I think that's a fair enough price.
Yeah, I have to say he surprised me a bit because I thought one stage in his career he was never going to win another race, but actually he's gone on and done some pretty decent stuff since then. So fair play to American Mike. Yeah, good luck, Dan, with that on Sunday. And Jake, what about you for the rest of the day?
Yeah, American Mike's obviously one of them. Echo all of Dan Sports, loves Navan, and I think Gordon said that he'd actually appreciate the decent ground. So yeah, he's definitely a bet around 5 or 6-1. In the bumper at Cheltenham, the 4 o'clock, Fortune de Mer got beaten at the October meeting, was obviously a massive eye catcher. I think a few people gave out about Harry Skelton, but first time up in a bumper, I thought it was a really nice performance. I think he can step forward for that. He's jocked up for this one, so hopefully he runs. I think there was also a horse called Master Debonair who did very similar a couple of years ago. He got beat in October where he looked all over the winner, then went and made amends in November. So yeah, I like him. And then another one I'll just give a quick mention to in the Southern National. There's 2 horses in here I really like the look of. Obviously, I don't know if they can be declared or not. Jubilee Express is the favourite at 5-1. I think he's got a great chance. Progressive horse, Dylan Johnson's aboard. And then Glimpse of Gala is around 14-1 for the race. Her form, where she was second behind El Elefante the other day, has been boosted since. She's only had 2 runs over fences, which were both over 2.5 miles in the exact same race actually at Worcester. But she missed last season because of a virus. She's back this season. She's ran loads of races over 3 miles on over hurdles, so she stays well. They're going to go step her up to a national trip by the looks of it, and I think she'd have a great chance. That 14-1 would be massive.
Great stuff. Super cases made, as always, from both Dan and Jake. I've getting my names wrong tonight. I was about to say Darren John. I was about to say Darren John.
It's been a long couple of days for you, mate. It's okay. Get some rest.
Thanks. Please do remember to like and subscribe, though. It really does help us. And get clicking that button, and do comment with your best fancy for the weekend at Cheltenham or elsewhere. We'd love to hear what you think about Prestbury Park and the 3 days there. Until next time on The Jump Show, we'll see you for the Betfair Chase Day preview.